They didn't say it as a joke. They didn't whisper it in a hallway or mutter it where deniability could survive. They said it plainly, in a locked room, during what they claimed was a routine security procedure on a United States military installation. Get necked. 3 men. No witnesses. Fake scanners. A room designed not for safety, but for silence. They didn't know her name. They didn't know her rank. They didn't know what her stillness actually meant. Because the woman they forced out of her uniform that morning wasn't administration. She wasn't logistics. She wasn't a paper pusher sent to shuffle files through a neglected corner of a forgotten base. She was a Tier 1 Naval Special Warfare Admiral, embedded, armed not with visible rank, but with authority so deep it didn't need to announce itself. Authority that could erase systems. Authority that could burn entire contractor networks down before sunrise. And she had walked into the gray zone on purpose. They called the place Integrity Processing Annex. The name alone was a lie polished smooth by repetition. From a distance, it looked legitimate. Department of Defense signage, official routing codes, security fencing aligned just right to suggest order. But up close, the truth seeped out through the cracks. This was contractor territory. No parade decks. No salutes. No clear chain of command you could point to and say that's who answers. Just shipping containers converted into offices, chain-link fences humming with humidity, and men with badges who spoke like command without ever wearing the flag. The gray zone existed because it worked. People passed through constantly, Marines rotating from field training, Navy technicians rerouted from ships, logistics officers carrying sealed manifests. Everyone learned the same unspoken rule quickly. You didn't argue here. Not because there were guns pointed at you. Not because mortars fell nearby, or alarms screamed overhead. But because jurisdiction blurred, just enough to make resistance feel risky. Because uncertainty did the work fear used to do. Because men with contractor badges had learned they could speak like authority, and most people would listen. She arrived just after dawn, when the air sat heavy on the lungs, and the first shift hadn't yet shaken the night out of their eyes. No motorcade. No security detail. A single government transport van rolled to the gate, stopped, and left her standing on the gravel, as if she were just another name on a clipboard. Her uniform was regulation and unremarkable. No visible rank. No ribbons. Hair secured tight at the nape, neat enough to disappear into the background. On her wrist, a plain ID band read one word that explained nothing. Liaison. To most people, that meant paperwork. Observation. Someone who asked questions, but didn't make decisions. The only thing that didn't match the label was how she stood. Loose, balanced, still. Like someone accustomed to rooms where permission was optional and violence was measured, not emotional. The contractor at the gate glanced at her ID, then at her face. He didn't recognize her. That made him relax. That was the mistake. He leaned back in his chair, chewing something he hadn't earned the leisure for. His voice carried just enough for the others nearby to hear. You here for records, or command watch? 2 men looked over. They smirked. The smirk said what he didn't. You don't look important. She met his eyes for a single steady beat and answered calmly. Neither. The smirk flickered, just for a second, confusion slipping through before arrogance returned sharper than before. Then what are you? He asked, amused now. Some kind of inspector. She didn't correct him. She wasn't here to be believed. She was here to see what happened when the wrong woman entered the gray zone and refused to leave on its terms. Inside, the performance escalated quickly. The lead contractor, stocky, unshaven, wearing a defer ops patch that looked more decorative than official, scanned her ID band and frowned theatrically at his tablet. He muttered. Mismatch. Not syncing with the DoD relay. It was nonsense. The local server wasn't even properly hardwired. Everyone in that room knew it. But nonsense worked when spoken with confidence. PI Zone 3? One of the others asked, already turning away. The lead nodded. Just a formality. PI Zone 3 wasn't listed on any public map. It had no door label, no posted inspection log. But every contractor on site knew exactly what it meant. Private integrity zone. The room you used when you wanted silence to look like compliance. She followed without hesitation. One man ahead, two behind. No words exchanged. Just subtle shaping of space, guiding her down a narrowing corridor, converted from old maintenance storage. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air grew hotter as they moved. One punched in a 4-digit code. The door hissed open. Inside, the room was small and stale. Boot rubber, old freon, heat trapped by walls that hadn't been painted in years. A camera blinked red in the corner, disconnected so long it might as well have been decoration. "Step inside," the lead said. She did. The door closed. It locked. "Remove all gear." She complied, boots unstrapped, belt folded carefully, jacket placed neatly on the table. Calm. Deliberate. Not submissive, not defiant. They mistook discipline for weakness. A hand brushed her sleeve under the pretense of inspection. Too slow. Too casual. Not part of any protocol that existed outside this room. "IDs still not syncing," the lead said again, tapping his tablet like scripture. "Cleared for secondary." "Secondary?" she asked neutrally. "Body check." "Just visual." A beat passed. "Proceed," she said. They heard permission. What she gave them was rope. The fake scanner appeared. Black plastic, unpowered, waved with exaggerated seriousness. The light overhead adjusted deliberately, angled away from the dead camera. A third man positioned himself behind her. The tone shifted. Formal on the surface. Something colder underneath. "All layers," one said. She held his gaze. "Clarify." He leaned in, voice dropping, confidence sharpened by isolation. "Get necked." The moment froze. She nodded once, and began to comply. But something changed in her posture. Breathing deepened. Shoulders adjusted. Spine aligned. Calibration. They didn't see it. They never did. They thought silence meant surrender. And that was where the gray zone made its final mistake. They mistook her silence for shock. That was the oldest lie rooms like this told themselves. Men convinced that if a woman didn't scream, didn't resist, didn't protest loudly enough, then she must not know what to do. That obedience was weakness. That stillness was surrender. She let them believe it. The fake scanner hovered closer now, sweeping down her torso with exaggerated care. Not touching skin. Not yet. Close enough to invade. Close enough to make it clear this wasn't about weapons or contraband. The overhead lamp had been adjusted just wrong on purpose, casting light into the blind corner the dead camera never covered. "Standards are tighter these days," one of them muttered, half to himself, half to the room. "Gotta keep everything clean." She didn't respond. Her face stayed unreadable, eyes steady, breathing even. That silence unsettled them more than fear ever would. The man holding the scanner stopped in front of her again. "Undershirt now," he said, like it was nothing. "Could be blocking the sensor." She waited half a beat longer than politeness allowed, then began undoing the buttons of her uniform shirt one by one. Slow. Methodical. Not rushed. Not hesitant. The third man leaned forward slightly. The second laughed under his breath. Beneath the uniform was a plain black regulation undershirt. Nothing dramatic. Nothing for them to admire. That annoyed them. "All layers," the second said from the corner. "Need everything off." She looked at him directly. "Calm. Flat. Say it clearly." He thought he'd won. Thought this was submission finally cracking. He leaned in just enough to feel bold. "Get necked." The word landed heavier this time, because it wasn't pretending to be policy anymore. Protocol had slipped. Intent was exposed. She nodded. And as she lifted the hem of the undershirt, everything else locked into place. Her breathing shifted first, slow, deep, controlled. Combat breath. Not panic. The kind drilled into muscle memory over decades of training, where your nervous system learns how to switch states on command. Shoulders dropped, tension bleeding out. Spine settled. Feet adjusted, just enough to change her center of gravity, without looking like movement at all. Calibration complete. They saw none of it. The scanner man smiled wider. "That's it," he murmured, like he was teaching her something. Behind her, the third contractor moved closer. Close enough that she could feel his breath brush the back of her neck. The second man drifted toward the door, turning his body subtly, placing himself between her and the exit. They were closing the cage. She let them. Because the moment mattered. Because the evidence required intent. Because they needed to cross the line cleanly. The third man reached forward. His fingers slid toward her waistband. Not searching. Not checking. Claiming. Making the humiliation real. Her right hand came down slowly, as if adjusting fabric, as if nervous. Her fingertips brushed the inner seam of her belt line. To them, it looked like fear. It wasn't. A tactile pulse sensor stitched invisibly into the lining vibrated once, sharp and silent. A micro device no larger than a coin activated, tying her concealed body cam into a secure encrypted uplink. Not to the base. Not to contractors. Not to anyone who could intercept or delay. Straight to Naval Command oversight. Straight into Tier 1 review. A red indicator blinked behind the lining of her shirt for a fraction of a second, then vanished. The room didn't change. The balance of power did. She stepped her left foot back exactly 3 inches. Not retreat. Structure. Her heel settled. Hips aligned. Weight anchored. Breathing slowed further, deeper, controlled. The scanner man mistook it for hesitation. "Just cooperate," he said softly. "This'll be over quick." The third contractor pressed harder at her waistband. His voice dropped into a whisper meant to sound reassuring. "That's better." She turned her head just enough for him to see her eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Empty. Like a scope sight. "Remove your hands," she said quietly. "Flat." Recorded. He chuckled. Didn't move. Leaned in further. That was the moment they committed. Not when they closed the door. Not when they lied about the scanner. Not when they ordered her to undress. The crime became undeniable when he shifted his weight forward, confidence tipping him onto his toes. She moved. Not fast in the way civilians think of speed. No wild swing. No scream. Just decisive action, compressed into a single breath. Her right arm snapped upward, forming a compact wedge that drove precisely between the scanner man's wrist and elbow. It wasn't a strike born of force, it was geometry. The joint collapsed instantly. The fake wand clattered to the floor, before his brain processed pain. She stepped inside his space before he could fall. Her left hand surged into his brachial plexus, that vulnerable pocket where nerve clusters live. She didn't hit to injure. She hit to erase decision-making. His knees buckled. His body sagged, mind disconnected from limbs. Behind her, the second man lunged. Too slow. She pivoted on her back heel, using his momentum against him. Her elbow drove into the radial nerve along his forearm. Not enough to break bone. Enough to kill function. His grip died. His balance went with it. She dropped low, scooped under his center of gravity, and threw. He hit the floor flat, chest slamming hard, head bouncing off the mat with a dull, final-sounding thunk. 2 down. The third man yelled. Not rage, not command. Fear. His hand shot toward the comms MIC on his vest. A mistake that almost saved him. She closed the distance in 3 steps. Her palm struck his sternum just below the collarbone. Controlled. Surgical. A sternum strike that doesn't break ribs, it shuts systems down. His back hit the wall hard enough to knock the air from his lungs. She didn't follow through. She held him there. Fingers spread. Pressure calibrated. Dominance without chaos. He slid downward, conscious, gasping, eyes unfocused. She stepped back. 3 men on the floor. Breathing. Alive. Finished. She bent, retrieved the dropped scanner, inspected it like evidence, then placed it neatly on the table. Her shirt still hung loose. She buttoned it slowly, deliberately, as if reclaiming control she had never actually lost. She glanced at the dead camera in the corner. "This base is now compromised," she said calmly. And then she walked out, leaving the gray zone behind her, already collapsing in her wake. She didn't hurry. That was what unsettled people first. She stepped out of the sealed room without urgency, without looking back, moving down the corridor like someone exiting a routine briefing rather than a compromised interrogation space littered with restrained men. Conversations along the hallway died as she passed. Contractors glanced up, caught something in her posture, and looked away again without knowing why. She moved like authority didn't need to announce itself, because it didn't. At the communications desk, a junior technician leaned over a console humming softly with static. He barely looked up. "Can I help?" She placed her badge on the desk. Matte black. No shine. No rank. No decoration. Just a soft-coated seal embedded beneath the laminate. The technician's voice stopped mid-word. His eyes flicked over the embedded clearance lines once, then again. His fingers froze above the keyboard, suddenly unsure whether touching anything at all might be a violation. "You're active military?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied. "I'm embedded." She tapped the center of the badge once. The concealed feed confirmed upload completion. The data from PI Zone 3 was already gone from the building, already climbing the ladder that no one on this island controlled. "That tag," the technician whispered. "It's not standard." "It's not supposed to be," she said. "Patch me through." Flag command. Authorization code. NESC Victor 4. Tier review. He didn't argue. He typed. The console flashed, hesitated, then turned green as the encrypted satellite relay locked on. A secure channel snapped open, bypassing local command, bypassing contractor infrastructure, bypassing every jurisdictional excuse the gray zone had ever hidden behind. "The line's live," he said, barely breathing. She leaned slightly toward the MIC. "Priority escalation," she said, voice calm, surgical. "Officer-level assault recorded on Department of Defense-cleared liaison under falsified security protocol. Immediate lockdown authorization requested. Contractor ID prefix DSO. Site designation Lima 407. No response. Just a single chime. Acknowledgement received. The technician stared at her. I don't think I'm allowed to." "You're not," she said gently, lifting her badge. "But I am." Within 60 seconds, every active contractor badge tied to Defer Ops flashed red. Authorization revoked. Access locked. By the 2-minute mark, perimeter gates sealed. At 3 minutes, the helipad registered a redirected inbound signal from a naval police gunship stationed 50 miles east. By 4 minutes, the base was shutting itself down. She turned away from the desk without another word. The technician found his voice only as she reached the corridor. Who do I say authorized this?" She paused. Looked back just enough to make it real. "Admiral Cade," she said. "Naval Special Warfare Command. Tier 1 Evaluation Division." Then she walked on. 8 minutes after the concealed feed went live, rotors thundered overhead. The gunship dropped onto the tarmac without request or warning, blades cutting through the humidity like a verdict. No clearance call. No chatter. The kind of arrival that rewrote the chain of command by existing. 3 military police disembarked first. Visors down. Weapons controlled. Not contractors. Not local security. Joint response, seal aligned. Everyone on base knew exactly what that meant. By the time they reached the central corridor, Cade was already there, standing at parade rest. On the table beside her lay a printed access log, timestamps, digital signatures, the fabricated compliance protocol used to isolate personnel inside PI Zone 3. The lead MP scanned the pages once. "Confirm 3 detainments," he said into his comm. "No interviews. No calls." The contractors didn't resist. They backed away from desks. From consoles. From hallways they'd once treated like territory. Not because Cade threatened them. Not because she raised her voice. Because she didn't look at them at all. By minute 14, the 3 men from the room were zip-cuffed, stripped of IDs, and escorted toward the landing zone for off-base removal. One tried to meet her eyes as he passed. Her gaze moved through him like air. The system didn't crack. It folded. Word spread fast through whispers and sealed glass. An admin clerk messaged a sister base. Compliance drill shut down. Someone high level. Whole site locked. The defer station chief didn't even make it to his office. A warrant officer intercepted him with a sealed document that ended his authority in 3 paragraphs. A Marine staff sergeant leaned toward another and murmured. She didn't even raise her voice. She didn't have to, came the reply. That's worse. They gave her a room, converted supply storage, bad lighting, a fan ticking like a countdown. She didn't care. She needed paper. And the paper told the story the gray zone had been burying. Unredacted files. Personnel rosters. Shift logs. Complaints marked resolved without explanation. Disciplinary reassignments signed without timestamps. Medical flags with no follow-up. She didn't hunt for a pattern. It bled off the pages. 6 women reassigned in 12 months under vague pretexts. 4 transfer requests. 2 medical leaves. 1 breakdown logged without counseling attached. The most recent case barely 6 weeks old. Escorted to private zone for clarification, 1 report read. Released after debrief. No further action. No rank listed. No witnesses logged. Just fog. A sticky note clung to 1 file. Handled internally. No need to elevate. She peeled it off and dropped it in the trash. Her pen moved without hesitation. Immediate and irreversible revocation of contractor authority. All defer operations suspended pending SOCOM investigation. Compliance protocols absorbed under Joint Integrity Command. Navy oversight only. All flagged files reopened. 1 final line. This is not a correction. This is a controlled extraction from embedded cultural rot. She signed it simply. Admiral Cade. When a DoD liaison finally asked if she had a statement, she didn't look up. Just actions, she said. And by the time he understood what that meant, the gray zone no longer existed. By 0400, the collapse was complete. Not loud. Not theatrical. Not accompanied by speeches or press releases. It happened the way real power always moves, quietly, precisely. Without asking for permission. When Admiral Cade's Tier 1 recommendation reached Pacific Command, it wasn't debated. It wasn't softened by committees or buried in legal review. The language was final, and everyone who read it understood why. Failure to exercise oversight on private security protocols. Systemic misconduct confirmed. Immediate suspension pending investigation. Colonel Havers, the base commander, didn't get a warning call. His access key stopped working before he finished reading the message. A cold walk to the perimeter followed. No appeal. No pause. Just authority withdrawn as cleanly as it had once been granted. The internal compliance officer fared no better. His system access vanished mid-login. A military police officer was already waiting at his desk with sealed transport orders. No argument. No explanation needed. Defer Ops didn't just lose this base. Their contract was shredded across 9 others before the sun finished climbing over the ocean. Cade's recommendation wasn't advisory. It was a verdict carried upward, validated, and executed by a command structure that had finally decided it was done pretending the gray zone was accidental. Across the western chain of Navy-aligned installations, protocols shifted within hours. Contractor access suspended. Compliance procedures rewritten. Cameras reinstalled. Real ones this time. Live feeds archived, audited weekly. Private integrity rooms sealed, welded shut. PI Zone 3 disappeared behind steel. Nobody asked who ordered it closed. Nobody needed to. There was no ceremony. No press briefing. Cade wasn't present for the aftermath. She boarded a C-17 transport with no insignia and no manifest, leaving behind a single sealed envelope addressed to Naval Legal Services. Inside were names, victims, witnesses, and a few who had tried, and failed, to stop what was happening. An officer at the flight line asked quietly, "Do you want to make a statement before you go?" She shook her head. "Not for me." "Will someone speak on your behalf?" She glanced at the engines spooling, the aircraft already preparing to lift away from the base she had dismantled without firing a shot. "They won't need to," she said. "Not after what they've seen." The plane lifted. The rotors faded. And what remained behind wasn't relief, it was silence. On base, the silence felt heavier than alarms ever had. Someone asked a senior warrant officer if they'd gotten a quote from the woman who triggered the shutdown. He didn't blink. "She didn't give a quote," he said. "Just a folder." A pause. And a warning. 2 days later, new guards arrived. Different patches. Different posture. No contractors. Every checkpoint staffed by Navy personnel with a visible, traceable chain of command. Nobody smirked at liaison anymore. Nobody joked during searches. Nobody asked if you were admin, intel, or just observing. The gray zone wasn't gray anymore. In the mess hall, the story spread sideways, half-whispered. She didn't even raise her voice. Took all 3 down in seconds. They tried to strip a Tier 1 SEAL. Didn't know until they were on the floor. Most people never saw her face. But they learned the name. Cade. Never spoken loudly. Not out of fear, but respect. Because stories like hers didn't end with medals. They ended with behavior changes. With power relining itself. During compliance orientation, a junior officer asked his instructor, "What if we're unsure how to proceed with a new arrival?" The instructor didn't look up. "If she asks whether you're sure," he said, "you're already not." The phrase stuck. Scribbled on notepads. Joked about nervously in barracks. But no one laughed for long, because underneath the legend was a truth everyone now understood. Silence wasn't weakness. Calm wasn't submission. And authority didn't always announce itself with rank and noise. Somewhere else, another base, another checkpoint, another place where jurisdiction blurred, someone like Cade was walking in quietly. And if you were the one who made the wrong decision next time, you wouldn't get a warning. You'd get a verdict. Delivered faster than your next breath. And this time, no one would even remember your name.